I call Sarah Dowling.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and it's an honour to rise in support of the Wildlife Powers Amendment Bill, and an honour to speak on behalf of the dedicated DOC rangers that deal with protecting wildlife, that deal with detection of those who seek to harm or poach our wonderful, unique and rare wildlife, investigate those criminal activities and apprehend offenders should be acknowledged. I want to say to Mr Parker, who just sat down, with respect to water quality, that I can say that in Southland it has been a wonderful process led by Environment Southland to bring in place a land and water plan that looks to the future on the back of the national policy statement to maintain and improve our water catchments. And they've run a collaborative process that has involved not only DOC stakeholder advice, but those working in the dairy industry, those working in the sheep industry, a very collaborative approach that brings all of the stakeholders together to maintain and improve water quality. And of course, DOC have been part of that. But back to the bill at hand, that is with respect to amending the powers dealing with detection, investigation and apprehension of offending against our wonderful wildlife. I'm very supportive of that and the powers that will be extended and given to our DOC rangers that often find themselves in isolated areas having to deal with extreme situations that in some cases can put themselves into harm's way, but they do their job extremely well and should be thanked very much for it. Tourism, of course, is growing in New Zealand. It's now our second biggest export earner, and 3.2 million people visited New Zealand in 2015. So on the back of that, as part of that, of course, New Zealand has a niche market. It has a niche market because people come here to enjoy our natural beauty. They come here to enjoy our rare and unique wildlife and see these animals in situ. So they are able to go into our national parks, into our conservation areas, into our reserves that span the length and breadth of New Zealand and enjoy seeing these wonderful species in their natural habitat. Of course, that is also of risk, because it means that poachers can come into our country, sometimes undetected, and can get away with given that they're paid quite considerable amounts, get away with taking some of our breeding pairs of our wonderful geckos, skinks, birds. And when you're talking and dealing with threatened species, to have a breeding pair taken from that population can be extremely devastating, and we need to protect our wildlife for our future generations to enjoy. So we need to give our DOC rangers extended powers to deal with these offenders effectively. And I do want to just turn to my colleague Scott Simpson. He talked about some of the wonderful natural areas in his region. Of course, I have Fiordland National Park, I have Rakiura National Park, which is our newest national park in New Zealand. And of course, that is not immune from offenders. Some years back, I remember DOC officers seeing choppers fly away, and it was suspected that they had some of our rare and native skinks and geckos in their possession, and yet there was little that they could do about it at that stage. So extending these powers is fantastic for our DOC officers. Of course, the power to intervene, to prevent or stop offending. The Minister already talked about some of these things that could occur, removing illegally set traps when they reasonably suspect that offending is occurring. The power to stop a person. Previously, of course, DOC officers can only stop vehicles when they suspect that there is some sort of offending occurring. Of course, the power to take further details like date of births and take identification, and then of course the power to seize further information to build a case. So this is an effective change to the bill, and I absolutely support it in aid to these wonderful people that protect our wildlife.